The movie kicks off with David standing on a mountain, casually mentioning how he spent his day leaping from Mount Kilimanjaro to Rio and then catching the NBA Finals, all before lunch. But life wasn't always this wild for him. Once upon a time, David was just an ordinary guy. We flash back to young David, nervously approaching his crush, Millie. She dreams of traveling the world, and David, hoping to impress her, gives her a snow globe with the Eiffel Tower inside. Their sweet moment is abruptly shattered when the school bully, Mark, shows up. He mocks David and hurls the snow globe into a frozen lake. Determined, David goes after it, but the ice cracks beneath him, plunging him into the freezing water. Just when it seems all hope is lost, David suddenly finds himself not underwater but inside the Ann Arbor Library. Confused but relieved, he heads home, where his abusive father, William, is waiting. David quickly retreats to his room and locks the door, enraging William. As William tries to break in, David teleports back to the library. It's then that he realizes he has a strange new power: he can teleport. Back in his room, David sees his father talking to the police. With a heavy heart, he decides to leave, just like his mother did when he was 5. Before he goes, he grabs a picture of her and his savings. Millie, meanwhile, is heartbroken for David when she finds his snow globe but can't find him anywhere. David ends up in New York, where he rents a room and vows to keep a low profile. The next day, he starts to wonder if he can control his powers. On his first try, he nearly gets hit by a falling tree branch. Undeterred, he heads to Emigrant Savings Bank and, while pretending to need the restroom, sneaks a glance at the vault. Back in his room, he hatches a plan. That night, David teleports inside the bank's vault and steals all the cash, becoming a millionaire overnight. The next morning, Roland, who's posing as an NSA officer, arrives at the bank. The officer tells him that the thief didn't use any doors, leaving everyone baffled. Roland demands the CCTV footage for the entire month and the records of everyone who made deposits. The officer hesitates, but Roland insists, and the officer reluctantly complies. 8 years later, David, now mature and living in New York, reveals he had a happy ending. His walls are covered in pictures of different places, allowing him to teleport anywhere he wants. David gets ready, heads to a bar, and spots a beautiful girl. Using his powers, he approaches her. But a man in the bar notices David's abilities and stares at him suspiciously. David takes the girl back to his place. After spending some time together, he leaves her and spends the rest of his days surfing in a storm in Fiji and enjoying a picnic by the Sphinx. Suddenly, the scene shifts to a forest where electric lights flash, revealing another jumper trapped in electric wires. Roland appears, declaring he hunts jumpers. The trapped jumper asks why, but Roland coldly kills him, saying, "Only God has the power to be everywhere at once." When David returns to his room, Roland is there, revealing he's been hunting him for 8 years. When David asks to speak to his lawyer, Roland says he just wants to know how David robbed the bank without opening the doors. David tries to brush him off, but Roland reveals he knows everything about him. As David attempts to jump away, Roland uses a device that sends thousands of volts through David's body. David grabs a picture to escape, but Roland warns him that electricity makes jumping impossible. David manages to cut the wire by jumping across the wall and escapes before Roland can reach him, taking his money and jumping back home. William, David's father, rushes to see his son, revealing that he's gone mad and begs David to keep visiting him. David teleports away, assuring his father, "You're not crazy." He wonders what to do next and returns to Ann Arbor. Meanwhile, Roland searches through David's belongings and finds Millie's picture. He sees Millie's mother, who hugs him tightly, relieved to see him alive. He asks her about Millie and is stunned to learn she's working at a local bar. As he watches her in shock, he accidentally bumps into Mark. Mark latches onto David, but David tries to shake him off until Millie shows up. She tells David she noticed him watching her and suggests they talk. Out of nowhere, Mark starts causing trouble with Millie, sparking a fight with David. As Mark gains the upper hand, David, furious, drags him back to the bank vault he emptied 8 years earlier. Mark is terrified when David warns him he doesn't understand his own powers. Finally, David meets up with Millie again and tells her Mark won't be coming back anytime soon. As they talk, Griffin, the mysterious man, spots David. David chats with Millie and discovers that as she's grown older, she's given up on her dream of traveling the world. When she asks about him, David mentions he's in banking and casually drops that he's planning a trip to Rome, knowing it's her dream destination. Millie eagerly agrees, and 10 hours later they're in Rome. Meanwhile, Roland, now pretending to be a CIA officer, arrives at the police station where Mark is being held. When the officer questions Roland's credentials, Roland knocks him out and turns off the camera before confronting Mark. He convinces Mark to explain how he ended up in the vault, then orders his men to head to Rome. Back in the hotel, Millie questions David about his sudden lifestyle change, but he sticks to his story about banking. Millie allows him to keep his secrets as long as he doesn't lie to her. They enjoy their time together, and David takes Millie to the Colosseum, knowing how much she loves it. As they get closer, Griffin watches them, annoyed by David's behavior. The guards refuse them entry, frustrating David. When Millie walks away disappointed, David opens the door, giving her the chance to tour her favorite place. Inside, he tries to get a better view from Millie but finds the door to the ground floor locked. He leaves to open it and runs into Griffin, who starts taunting him. When David gets angry, Griffin reveals he's also a jumper and warns that David's actions have attracted the attention of Roland's paladins. 2 paladins soon arrive, and as Griffin fights them, David tries to escape but gets caught. Griffin defeats both paladins, but a woman spots them with the bodies. Griffin jumps away, and David follows him to his cave. Griffin doesn't want David around and reminds him of Millie. David returns to her, but as they leave the Colosseum, the police arrest him. During questioning, David insists on speaking to Millie. She waits for him, learning the officers are expecting the magistrate. When the magistrate arrives, David is shocked to see it's his mother, who discreetly gives him 30 seconds to escape. David reunites with Millie, gets them a cab, and they head to the airport. Millie suddenly changes her mind and asks David what's in his bag. When he shows her the cash, she questions how he got it, but David tells her she's on her own now. Meanwhile, Roland is furious that his men lost David and decides to take a different approach. He confronts William, who lies about the last time he saw David, claiming it was 8 years ago. When Roland asks about William's wife, he learns she left when David was 5. Seeing her picture, Roland is shocked and becomes suspicious of William. David then goes to Griffin's hideout, where he learns that hundreds of paladins are hunting down jumpers. When compelled for detailed history, Griffin reveals that the paladins have been killing jumpers since medieval times, driven by religious fanaticism. He explains that the Inquisitions and witch hunts were their doing and warns David that he's put his entire family and Millie in danger. David rushes home, only to find his father unconscious on the floor. Heartbroken, he takes him to the hospital. David, furious, confronts Mark in jail and loses it when he finds out Mark has spilled everything to Roland. With only 8 hours before Millie's flight lands, David rushes to Griffin's hideout, desperate to borrow something to kill Roland. Griffin, unimpressed, shows the scars Roland gave him a decade ago and dismisses David's request, warning him he's being foolish. Despite calming down and proposing they team up, Griffin refuses and jumps to China. David quickly follows, using Griffin's jump scar. Griffin tries to shake him off, but eventually, David catches up and pitches a Marvel team up, suggesting they unite against Roland. Griffin isn't interested until David reveals he knows Roland's location. Stealing a car, Griffin uses his powers to jump with it, revealing that anything that moves can jump too. During the drive, David learns Griffin has been jumping since he was 5 and, without parents around, never had to hide his powers. When David starts talking about his own family trauma, Griffin shuts him down. They strike a deal to save Millie and kill Roland before going their separate ways. But when they reach the airport, they discover Millie's flight has already landed. Griffin heads off to arm himself while David rushes to find her. At Millie's house, David finds her angry about being stranded at the Roman airport. As he apologizes, David spots Roland and his men arriving. Panicked, he confesses to robbing banks and demonstrates his powers, scaring Millie before jumping back to Griffin's lair. Meanwhile, Roland tracks the jump scar and uses a machine to reopen it. David confronts Griffin, revealing he's brought Millie with him. Griffin, furious, realizes Roland has a device that can open wormholes. As they rush inside, they spot the wormhole opening and quickly hide to avoid Roland. David notices a picture of his mother and tries to grab it, but Roland catches him. Just as Roland is about to kill him, David pleads, asking why, since he's never hurt anyone. Roland coldly replies that everyone turns bad eventually, but before he can strike, Griffin intervenes, fighting Roland and tossing him out of the cave. As Roland struggles to get up, Griffin flees. Meanwhile, Millie discovers David tangled in wires. Griffin returns with a bus to finish Roland off but misses him. The fight moves to Millie's apartment. Meanwhile, Millie agrees to help David and asks him to take her home. As he frees himself, David confesses he's loved her since they were 5, but Millie doesn't seem to care. Griffin returns with a machine, but Roland captures Millie, binding her and waiting for David. David begs Griffin to help save her, but Griffin has other plans. He's ready to sacrifice Millie by blowing up Roland and his men. David refuses and jumps to the Colosseum with a safe. When Griffin catches up, David has already thrown the safe away. They start fighting, jumping from one place to another. David manages to get the detonator and tosses it off a building. The fight continues in midair, and they eventually land in Chechnya. Griffin, in the midst of a war zone, retrieves the detonator. As he taunts David, a falling electric pole threatens Griffin, and David shoves him into it, trapping him. Griffin begs for help, promising to assist David, but David walks away. At Millie's place, Roland and his men capture David. With his dagger ready, Roland prepares to kill him, but David tells Millie to take a deep breath. Using his full power, David jumps the entire apartment into a nearby lake. Millie breaks free and reunites with David, who jumps them both into a library, bringing the remains of the building with them. Millie panics when she finds David unconscious, but he soon regains consciousness. They spot Roland nearby, and David quickly acts to save Millie from him. David grabs Roland and hurls him into a cave, saying he could have fed him to the sharks but chose not to because he's different. After David leaves, Roland is left stranded and powerless. A few days later, David visits his mother's house and is surprised when a young girl calls her Mom. When his mother appears, David learns she's a paladin, and she left him because of that. His first jump happened when he was just 5. Overwhelmed with emotion, David asks what comes next. His mother, expressing her love, offers him a chance to start fresh. David then returns to Millie, who's waiting outside, and they jump together to someplace warmer as the movie ends.